I'm Zach Wilford.
I'm Shelby Strong.
I'm Haley McMillan.
I'm Brianna Nash.
Together we're the future leaders, and we wanted to talk about homelessness in Iowa City. So just to start out, by a quick show of hands, how many people have had an encounter with someone who is homeless in Iowa City? So if you look behind you, everyone raise their hand. As you can see, homelessness is abundant in Iowa City, so we wanted to address this community need and see if there's anything that we could do to help. We'll start by introducing the problem. We'll then talk about the shelter house. We'll talk about some of the services that it offers the homeless. We'll get into some suggestions that we have for the shelter house, and we'll finish up with what you can do to help. So over the past few years, we have found a few articles about the homeless, starting in 2013 with an article written by the Daily Iowan. Basically, it covers some of the new ordinances that came out at the time, which prohibited soliciting near ped mall entrances and parking meters, and it also prohibited laying on benches during certain times of the day. Then we had an article written last year by the Iowa City Press Citizen, which basically covered the only shelter house in Iowa City. And what stuck out to me in this article was that it's estimated that only 19% of the homeless population in Iowa City actually sought out the shelter. And finally, we had an article written this year, written by the Daily Iowan again, which got into more detail about that shelter house. And what stuck out to me in this article was that it's only open during the winter months. So outside of it only being the single shelter for the homeless, it's really only open for 3 or 4 months out of the year. So overall, we've found that there have been some steps taken to try and help out the homeless, but we feel that there's much more that can be done. And with that, I'll pass it to Bree.
So currently the shelter house is located at 429 Southgate Avenue, and the problem with that is that's located off campus, and the problem is that the concentration of the homeless is currently on campus. The shelter house is a non-profit organization that provides housing and supportive services since about 1983. Their mission is to provide safe shelter to help improve people's quality of lives as they move beyond homelessness. They do this as giving them support throughout their progress. It's kind of hard starting from having nothing to getting a job and not having that correct support to keep going. So that's what the shelter house tries to do. Some of the causes of homelessness currently are lack of affordable housing. I don't know how many of you live off campus, but Iowa City does not have affordable housing for anybody, and we're students getting help from our parents, and sometimes we struggle. So just the problem that they have to face that with low-income jobs presents multiple problems. Also with the low-paying jobs, it tends to have one or more financial crises in their lives. And then domestic abuse is another factor that goes into homelessness. Single parents, single moms, having to move out, not having the resources to do so with kids. The house does not allow intoxicated or registered offenders to enter the house. This is because the house serves as a general use house, which means that men, women, and children stay in the same place. This just helps prevent any problems that might come up. I will now pass it to Shelby for services.
So the shelter house offers a wide variety of services. The residential programs consist of the emergency shelter and the veteran stay. The emergency shelter participants are allowed to stay up to 45 days, and the veterans are allowed to stay up to 2 years. And both of these programs offer a lot of resources and services for support for them during their time at the shelter house, because it is a hard time in their lives. The drop-in services are not only available to the homeless, but also to low-income families or those who might have trouble paying their bills. And these are more for daily activities such as showers, laundry, they need access to phones or computer lab, just little things that come up. The Fairweather Lodge, this is a recovery program for those suffering from severe mental illness, and one of the requirements for the Fairweather Lodge is that they need to be employed. So what the shelter house did is they created 2 services, the Fresh Starts, which is a janitorial service, and the Culinary Starts, which is a food prep service. So this allows those that want to be enrolled in the Fairweather Lodge program to have a secure employment, and they are required to put 75% of their income into a personal savings. So they are assigned a financial manager to make sure that's going to happen and just kind of be there for financial support for them. And And then the last program I'm going to cover is the Supportive Training and Access to Resources Program, also called the STAR program. And the staff that runs this program, they are there as support to kind of help the participants to overcome obstacles and inhibitors that might prevent them from overcoming their homeless. So there's vocational services offered, educational services, child services, transportation if they need to get to and from an interview. Just things to kind of help their self-sufficiency and their self-determination that in the long run is going to help them be a better person and have a better chance of finding permanent housing. And just a fast statistic, as of August 2014, the STAR program has helped over 400 adults. And now I'll turn it over to Zach.
Alright, now that we've learned a little bit more about what the shelter house does, we kind of sat around as a group and thought about some things that we thought they could do better to better help the homeless and our community. Our top thing was that they need to be open year-round. We understand that with the financial situation that they may be currently in, the winter months are all they can do, but if they can get some increased support from the campus, I think year-round should be the easiest possibility. Another great thing, since so many of the homeless are focused inside the kind of campus area of Iowa City and shelter houses outside of campus, we thought a shuttle service would be a great idea. If it may be visited down by the Ped Mall or more like populated areas, it could pick them up and give them transportation to and from the shelter house. Getting more campus involvement. There are lots of organizations here on campus that require service hours, that promote service hours, and if they may be paired up with those organizations to help get students involved, it'll create awareness on campus through the students, and it'll get more volunteers going through shelter house, which may be able to get more funds going to the shelter house so they're not so burdened with maybe more permanent staffing and things like that. Another great kind of like PR campaign thing that we thought of would be food trucks. If they had stations set up around campus or in areas where maybe the homeless tend to congregate that either gave out free food or very cheap food, that'll be great for them so that they can get the food they need. Also, if it is available to students like cheap and free food. That creates lots of awareness with the campus and with students, and that'll also bring students to help the shelter house because we want to keep the food going. Another great thing, as was mentioned earlier, the shelter house is kind of like a more common area that men, women, and children all stay in the same area, and because of that, maybe those suffering from drug abuse or currently inebriated aren't allowed to stay. If they had private housing available in the area, though they'd be able to take them in, maybe help them sober up and clean them up still, instead of just turning them away with them having nowhere to go. So with any additional funding they have, they might be able to make those kind of enhancements to their facility. And then you guys are all probably thinking the same thing. To do all these things, they need more money, and to get that money, they just need to have aggressive PR campaigns. A lot of us didn't know what the shelter house was when we started this project, and we definitely didn't know it was the only housing facility in Iowa City. So if they do get more campus involvement and create more awareness for themselves here on campus, all these things are a major possibility.
Okay, so some ways you guys can help is by donating. So some things you can donate are like clothes, over-the-counter medications, or bus passes. These things are extremely important during the winter seasons, as you know, cold season's coming around, and like we've all been mentioning that it is located outside of Iowa City, so having bus passes to get to and from places. You can donate to the Fairweather Lodge program, which Shelby mentioned earlier. You can also donate money to the endowment fund, which is donating not only to the shelter house located in Iowa City, but to all of them, so you're helping out everywhere. You can also help by volunteering. Being a client service volunteer is helping them with like paperwork and applications, which some of them may not be able to do on their own, and being a specialized volunteer, such as giving them haircuts. For more information, you can visit the website, the shelter house website, or you can contact Micah Stevens.
That's all we have. We'll open up for questions. All right, thank you guys.